Thank you for listening to the Dog Trainers Podcast, a podcast created by dog trainers for dog trainers, or anyone who's ever fallen in love with man's best friend.
Can I torture my friend for a second, Larry?
Sure.
Sorry, Brent. So pretty much what he just said was, so to get back to the jiu-jitsu thing, which I swear I never talk about ever.
I hate when you talk about jiu-jitsu. Anyway, go ahead.
But the thing is, it's so applicable, and I wanted to bring this up anyway, just because I like to. I'm just kidding. So I wanted to bring this up anyway, Larry, because in all seriousness, what you just said, I'll break it down like this for the listeners, and then I have a question for you, okay? So this is the best way that I've ever been described jiu-jitsu belts from a 5th degree black belt, somebody who, like you with dog training, has been in the sport just so long. And what I was told is white belts, they're new to the game. Your job as a white belt, like your job as a new dog trainer, is to find a game plan that works for you, get good at that one thing, and do your best to stick with it, because obviously the dog,
the limits.
Right. Well, the dog and the owners, and everybody's got their own kind of thing to throw you off. Like naturally, it's not their objective, but you've got to learn how to roll with your punches a little bit. Blue belts are just, enough now that you can venture out a little bit. You can be a little less robotic, because if you're a little more relaxed with your, just being human and having fun, how to get back on the rails and keep running on with your lesson, or so on. Purple belts are just really good blue belts. Brown belts are baby black belts. And once you hit black belt, you're a white belt again. You're so well versed now that you're starting all over of just exploring. This is totally new territory. Only you're seeing things from new eyes. And so my question to you is, do you think that there's something to the do you agree or disagree, I guess is my question.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, and my question is, have you noticed in dog training, people can take in information, but it doesn't quite hit them until way later when they're ready to absorb the information?
Yeah. Yes, I've talked about this with a few old timers quite a bit. For example, I had a conversation a while ago with someone that I really look up to and respect. And I said, I don't understand it. I've been to your seminars now 5 or 6 times, a lot of the same people there all the time, and they never change. They think it's the
They're
greatest
still figuring
thing.
it out.
Yeah, they think it's the greatest. They leave there going, this was unbelievable. This was the best thing I ever did.
Mm-hmm.
But then you see them 6 months later, a year later, and they're not doing anything that they learned. They haven't changed anything, and he said to me, you just got it, and so I always really tried. I think I'm only good at one thing in dog training, and that's learning. I'm pretty good at learning, I'm pretty
good at applying it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at taking things from people better than me and really analyzing it and making it my own. Because the second you try to copy or emulate someone, you're screwed. You can't do it.
Right. Not effectively anyway. Yeah.
You have to take those learning principles and the ideas and fit it into your own personality and quirks and behaviors. We all have that. You know what I mean? And the problem is today, to your exact question, I think one of the biggest mistakes is so many people have addiction to seminars. They go from seminar to seminar to seminar.
Seminaritis. That's what Michael Ellis called it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's admirable that they want to learn and they keep putting themselves out there, but they haven't been able to focus on anything they learned in the seminar 12 seminars ago.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so they just become seminar groupies and junkies.
It's like going to concerts. Yeah.
Yeah. I know some of them that have spent thousands and they're no better today than they were 5 years ago. Where if you could spend 1 weekend or 3 days or a week with one individual that has a lot more skill and knowledge than you, soak that in, spend the next year or two focusing on that. It's going to get you much further.
Yeah.
Right.
It's going to get you much further. It really is.
Yeah. There was a book that I read called The Talent Code, and
it's my favorite.
I love that book, and they talk about collecting the dots and then connecting the dots, right? And so some people just go out to seminars and on YouTube, and they're just collecting dots, but they never connect them. And I think, I think that's one of the goals of modern dog training is all right, how do we take the dots from this field? How can we access this matrix of knowledge that has been shown to us by, the people before us and taught to us? And how can we do right by this dog? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that book.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad you like that book.
Well, Michael and Bart Ballone turned the dog training world onto that book.
It's so good.
That is I get so bored when I get excited about a new book, and then I get 15, 20 minutes and I get bored. That was the first book
that you
I
keep,
read. I couldn't put it down. I couldn't put it down.
I read that whole book on the way to Utah and on the way back from Utah. I was working for the for animal rescue, and I finished the whole book. It's only like 3 or 4 hours to Utah and 3 or 4 hours back. Binged the whole thing on the plane.
No, you know what it did for me? It answered so many questions for me that I knew something worked that I've done for years, but I could never explain or understand why.
Yeah, or why it's not clicking with the client, or why it's not clicking with my student, or something. I love
that book really put that stuff into perspective. It's a must read for everyone in the dog training world.
Yeah, to give you guys a little bit of a preface of this book, this episode is brought to you by the Talent Code. Anyways, it's a book that talks about the development of skill and how some people think people are born with talent, but in essence, talent is something that you create, right? So some people could look at Kobe Bryant, for example, rest in peace, and be like, oh, he was born that way. No, that motherfucker worked his ass off every day to be the best that he could be. And this book follows different sports in different parts of the world, and they pretty much analyze the different things that these talent hubs are doing throughout the world to create the best of the best players, the best of the best musicians, the best of the best singers. And it puts it all in a book for you guys. It's a really, really awesome book.
One of the biggest things from that book that I don't know if I changed, but I focused on more, especially when I do seminars and stuff. Dog trainers have a tendency, when they ask the dog to perform a task and the dog hesitates or fails, they try to push them through it. Just stopping and starting over and starting from the beginning. The learning goes through the roof just by doing that. Changes everything. Changes everything.
I have to admit to you that that's a lesson. That right there was a lesson that I learned relatively recently. I've been training dogs now for close to like 10 years. And I figured that out maybe a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And it was actually Tyler Muto who really kind of put me onto that. Brent has been following Tyler Muto for a long time, and we had him on the podcast. And so ready for it, of course, I was like doing some research, and I saw a video he did on teaching the place command on e-collar, and
we'll get to that later.
Yeah, we'll get to. But I will never ever forget this moment. So Tyler is explaining how this dog isn't new, but it's new to e-collar pressure. So he's going through the whole process of, I'm going to walk the dog over to the bed, say place, do the whole thing. And then he walks the dog over. He stops himself physically. So the dog gets like, oh, we're stopping, and sits down on the bed. And then Tyler walks like a couple steps away to get closer to the camera to explain what's going on. And while he does this, the dog does one of these, like, not sure, I think I can get off now, really slow, like puts the paw on the ground. Tyler doesn't really say anything. He doesn't correct with the e-collar. He just takes the step back to the dog, and the dog goes.
Right.
And then he explains, he releases rewards, resets, and then he explains as to why sometimes, well, especially when the dog doesn't quite know, but even if the dog knew better, sometimes you have to just let that go for the sake of the momentum of the training overall. You can't fight every single little battle. And after that mistake, the dog was solid for the rest of that like 17-minute video. It was awesome.
Yeah, you can't have a dog that's scared of making mistakes.
Correct. Right.
And that was a big thing with that. My rant on the place command, people start hammering these dogs the second they get. I encourage the mistakes. I love the mistakes. I want the dog to make the mistakes, because showing the dog where the mistake is without hammering them physically and showing the dog what to do, the dog is going to learn it much better and much faster. And it's the same thing with the owners. I allow the owners, I need the owners to make mistakes. Absolutely. And that's why I'm very hands-on with them. Because once they make those mistakes, and even let's say I'm doing a private lesson the first week, first time I meet with them, I keep it so simple that I know they're going to screw it up. But in the way they're going to screw it up, they're not going to mess the dog up. And I tell them this. And I said, when I come back the second week, we'll fix all your mistakes. And that's what we do. And then they show me what they're doing. I say, okay, let's change this up. And it clicks for them then. It clicks when you can show them and give them a different way to do it. And the learning just goes so much faster because they get it like that, you know?
Do you find that the biggest, like in my experience, when I'm doing a go home, after board and train, or even with clients and privates, people are just doing too much, and you're literally trying to tell them, do less,
Right.
do less, do less. Stop relying on your tool. Stop relying on the tone of your voice. Do this, or push into them, or walk backwards, or do the, you know what I mean? And it's so funny because I always teach it. I'm like, I'm trying to teach you guys how to communicate without the reliance of this tool. If you ever want this dog to be off leash trained, well, we need to stop tapping. We need to stop pulling up on the leash. We need to stop doing all this stuff. And like, the only way we're going to get to complete verbal, if you guys just use these as backups. These are all your backups. And
if you want great off leash control, you have to do a lot more on leash control.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's what's going to get you there. You know, it's not going to come through punishment. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, it just isn't. But again, that goes back to such an enormous segment of the dog training population that's fairly new.
Right.
And they follow popular dog trainers that see, you don't like it, just punish it. You don't like it, just punish it. It's not going to work. Sure. You're not going to get to what you think you want to get. And the reason I put that video out that day is what I explained to people. Listen, guys, I don't pull this out of my ass laying in bed in the morning because I feel like posting something. I get sent videos every single day, every day. And it's disgusting. And I don't like seeing them. I don't ask for them. I don't want them. But if you see what some of these trainers do to these dogs, people that people trust, it's disgusting. Right. It's absolutely disgusting. And then when you talk to the former employees of some of these popular dog trainers, if they ever came forward and wanted to speak publicly, they'd be done. They'd be finished, because there's brutality that goes on in a lot of these board and trains that if I just talked about it, people would never believe it. They just wouldn't. Listen, some lady made a video the other day. I won't say her name, but she was referencing my video. She shouldn't do that. She shouldn't do that because of some of the videos I've had sent to me of dogs. One right now in particular that's in a rescue that's completely destroyed because of what she did. Because day one, the e-collar goes on, the prong collar goes on, and it's hammer, hammer, hammer. And they think they're fucking doing something. Right. They really think they're training a dog, you know, and it just sickens me. It pisses me off to no end because they shouldn't even have their hands on a dog. And they show this shit proudly, but do you know why they do? It's not their fault. They were taught that way by people they trust. And because that's how they were taught, they were like, look, I'm getting just as good as the people who taught me. And they don't have the ability to know that the people taught them are fucking douchebags. They don't get it. They don't understand it. That's a problem because it's a vicious cycle and it never stops.
Yeah.
Sorry for the rant.
No. I mean, so many times we hear trainers that, you know, we talk about, you know, like even people who are big influencers online, who they talk about, you know, when I started out, I worked for a kennel, you know, in wherever city they are, the Carolinas, the South, Texas, doesn't matter. And then they go, but I didn't like it there because they were too tough on dogs. So I left. You know, that's also part of an origin story we hear all the time. And so they find something that feels better. They find something that makes more sense, because anybody with common sense can eventually realize they keep hitting a brick wall. And I remember when I started in Keeler Method a long time ago, when I was 18, you know, as a young adolescent, you know, hormonal, cocky dude, of course, dominance and power and this and all that stuff. And it made me feel strong. Even though as a child, I didn't feel that strong. Right. And I see that happen a lot too. It's like sometimes, you know, that was feeding the ego, but there was no substance behind it. And eventually I would hit these brick walls. I would be like, how come when I demo a dog, his tail's down? How come when I demo a dog, his head's low? How come he's listening and only when the owner comes out post demo, the dog is wiggling, right? And so, you know, you start kind of coming to terms of like, all right, this dog is associating, you know, maybe perhaps learned helplessness with me, right? Perhaps this dog is associating, is scared to fuck up in front of me, right?
Walking on eggshells.
Yeah, and if you're sensitive or read a dog, you know, over time I used to be like, that's respect. That's not respect. That's not respect, because I've been able, and it was actually Michael Ellis's videos, the power training dogs with food, that I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do another demo where the dog's tail is down, not necessarily between his legs, just down, you know?
Right.
And then I did the whole pendulum swing. I did all food work. I just freaking ingested and binged Learberg night and day. You know, and it changes. It just changes you. It changes you. The evolution of
Michael's
mindset.
stuff is invaluable in the pet dog world.
Right.
And what's so valuable about it is it's very easy to learn and follow. Not saying you're going to be Michael Ellis, but the way he trains is very learnable for most dog trainers.
Yes.
And I don't think he gets enough credit for how much he's influenced the pet dog training industry. I really don't.
That's I agree with you. And it's funny that that he's not more, it's not like Learberg and Michael Ellis's personal channels aren't big, but they're just, you're amazed that they're not like 40 million followers, you know?
Yeah.
So I like to tell people, you know, like, oh, hey, yeah, we had Michael Ellis on the podcast, and somebody's like, who? And I'm amazed. And I'm like, okay, well, if you don't know, he's your favorite dog trainer's favorite dog trainer.
Yeah.
Right. That's great.
I wanted to take a little step backwards, since we're bringing up Michael and we're bringing up the importance of learning your lessons in in the correct order, because I agree with you guys. Michael Ellis, I personally think he's the best dog training teacher I've ever seen. I watched the Learberg stuff too.
Teacher. Yep.
Great teacher. And I think that's why everything's so learnable. He breaks down the little nitpicky details that you wouldn't think to explain to someone. You know, as a trainer, it's important to get these right when you're working a dog, but you don't think to explain to the owner, make sure your hand is perfectly head level, because if it's even this much higher, and he does. And, you know, with that, when we had him on, he was telling us about his own upbringing in the dog world, and how he too was too firm in the beginning. And he told us something that we thought was very profound. And that was, if he could go back and resurrect some of the dogs that he learned how to train with, he would do that and apologize to them.
Yeah. Well, listen, he's not just a great trainer and a phenomenal teacher, but he's a real good guy, humble guy.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah.
And at that level, it's really hard to find. It
just really class. Is. He's just class. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. I went out to his place in 2010, probably 11, 12 years ago.
Yep.
Just to try to be a better teacher.
Me and Mariano were going to go out right before COVID.
Right before COVID, really. Yeah. COVID it was already like happening, but it took a big downturn. And so we
were like, we're going to come see you in a week or two. He goes, great. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it was like locked down. Every city got locked down. Yeah. So we hope to redeem that invitation.
You know what the best part about going out to see Michael is?
What's that?
That he's in the Napa Valley.
Phenomenal Asian food. Phenomenal. Yeah.
I love that.
Fantastic. Good stuff.
Not the dog training, just the food for sure.
I mean, Michael's cool too, but the food, man.
Yeah. That's
a line of reason.